What's up guys, it's your boy, Big Shill, back with another Bungie apologist video. Actually though, in all seriousness, I think we've just witnessed what has to be one of the worst community reactions to an announced change that we've ever seen. And I feel like once again, tension between Bungie and the community is reaching some pretty uncomfortable heights. And we're not just talking about exotic nerfs here, although that is a pretty big part of the conversation, but I feel like from what's happening in the community, that sentiment towards Destiny and Bungie isn't in the best of places. And when I looked on Reddit, YouTube comments, Twitter, wherever it is following Bungie's recent twab, it really kind of became apparent as to where we're at. So I think we need to jump in and talk about it because I do think Bungie need to take the reins again, and I, like you guys, am really hopeful for a good content drop next season, but also a solid roadmap for the future. Nonetheless, there are some real tensions between a significant number of players and Bungie right now. And by the way, you personally may be pretty happy with D2 as it is, and maybe you think that some players are overreacting to this stuff, and everyone has opinions, right? But really, I think many of us can agree that some things feel like they're kind of going wrong, or at least it feels like there are some significant issues right now, so no hate, let's just talk about it. Right, so all the way back to the start, or at least the kind of tipping point for what has caused a lot of salt in the community. So Bungie announced in this week's twab that as we go into Season of Opulence, they're going to be retuning, or in fact straight nerfing, a handful of exotics. Whisper of the Worm is getting the D1 Black Hammer nerf essentially. Ace of Spades is going to be adjusted. Sorry Cade, I know it seems unfair. But also adjustments to Lord of Wolves and Sleeper Simulant, and not to mention the armor changes, affecting Orpheus Riggs and Skull of Dire Ahamkara, and then the much more predictable Shards of Galanor, Gwisin Vest, and Ursa. They're all getting, essentially, some kind of nerf. And there's a lot of ground to cover if we want to analyze the sandbox side of things, but regardless, the community, and when I say community, I mean a significant portion of the player base has reacted to this very, very badly. It is absolutely all over Reddit and my comment section right now. On the forums, there are petitions to stop the update, and DMG confirmed the update will absolutely be happening, but also, it's becoming kind of a meme. Season of Nerfs, Whimper of the Worm. There's even a new Reddit called Nerf the Game, and there are fan-made kind of troll roadmaps marking nerfs on the calendar as opposed to actual content drops. Some of it, is kind of amusing. People are definitely having fun with it, but I think there is a lot of genuine anger at this time as well. So the reaction has been pretty crazy, and I think there are definitely more factors at play than just the sandbox changes, which many strongly disagree with. So are people actually overreacting? Or maybe the better question would be, why is this reaction so bad? Well, I think it's because we've only heard, not necessarily great news about the future so far, and that's in regards to actual confirmed changes or content in the next DLC. Let's face it guys, we are at the tail end of a season in which a lot of players haven't really been super engaged, or have even straight up disliked the content on the most part. And I say that because I think there are some objectively good things about this season. The 0 hour mission, the Outbreak Perfected returning, I would say is definitely an example of that, but of course some of the other content, Gambit Prime, comes in some pretty strong flavors, and those aren't enjoyed by everybody. And so players really want to know what comes next, both in Season of Opulence, but beyond that as well. And everyone wants stuff to be excited about, really. We want to know what the road ahead even looks like in terms of content, and all we've really had is, controversial, or for many players, bad news, instead of big positives or exciting announcements. And I do recognize that things can't always be full speed ahead. Bungie have got their own plans to reveal and deliver this content, but I think the communication issues stand nonetheless, especially in comparison to last year, and that's where there also is a perceived change in Bungie's interaction on these issues. We will talk about that more in a moment though. So what are the actual conversations and points of tension right now? Well, let's look at a few of the more major things. There has been that ongoing conversation about enhancement cores, loads of feedback from the community, a lot of feedback about the infusion system, the grind around power leveling, and how material heavy a lot of this can actually be. And we have been given this feedback in some form since Forsaken dropped, and Bungie, on the subject of cores, have given a few new drop sources, but really, they don't want to budge against what the community are saying on cores for infusion. So for Season of Opulence, they've announced new gunsmith bounties designed to give more cores, but unfortunately, from what they've said early on at least, this is simply going to be a replacement to scrapper bounties, so otherwise the rewards are basically the same, bar some additional materials. So that's one change that Bungie have told us about, yet for a lot of players, it does feel like a disconnected half measure that doesn't really begin to address the actual issue that most players are talking about. However, we do have to wait and see what Bungie's more final plans for these are actually going to be, but that'll only be once we get any significant reveals, and of course we're only a couple of weeks away. And for all of the annual pass drops, Bungie simply haven't been hyping them up until we get about a week away. So what else do we know about the next season? Well, they're going to be nerfing Luna's Howl and Not Forgotten, and this one does see mixed feedback. Some folks would say that absolutely no one would agree with the nerf, but it is kind of a divisive issue. Again though, it's another blow to Pinnacle weapons, the best gear in the game, right? And while for me personally, I'm all for variety in the metagame, that is my personal preference, but there are people who feel truly frustrated at the fact that their hard-earned weapons, their prizes, are kind of being knocked down a peg, right? It's never a thing that feels good. Now, we did get some raid details, so let's be fair to Bungie. They told us early on about the release date for Crown of Sorrow, and this is great for some, folks who are very raid focused and have all of that day to play the game, but equally it's not fantastic news for everybody. The raid release structure has very much kind of been designed for the raid race, and I guess that's just a part of the experience, and hopefully Crown of Sorrow is going to be as awesome as it sounds like it could be. However, for a lot of players, there's probably some concern as to what the other content will be, because not everyone is a raider, and so essentially this leaves a lot of people hungry to know what they can look forward to at launch as well. Of course, Bungie wanted people to have the heads up that the raid was going to be launching on day one, so let's not be massive hypocrites right here. That is some good communication. I'm really talking more about the effect that it has depending on the type of player that you are, right? But then we finally loop back around to the nerfs, and we've got the announced exotic nerfs coming on June 4th. And when I spoke about this in the news video, I used the term mixed opinions when talking about this. And I think that's kind of true because not everyone agrees that this is a terrible update. It does, however, feel like a significant number of players do feel that way, but also, for example, some folks will agree with the Shards of Galanor nerf, but not the Whisper of the Worm nerf. So this is a very multifaceted conversation, and I don't want to make sweeping statements about how anybody does or should feel. Regardless, I think the lack of positive and exciting things being showcased, no mention of other weapon buffs taking place, there was nothing to offset the bad news, I suppose. And also the terminology, nerf, it comes with some pretty negative connotations right now. And I think Bungie didn't help themselves because they did make the mistake of saying we'll look to buff other things as opposed to nerf things as we move forward. And clearly that hasn't paid off well because now they are announcing multiple nerfs at the same time. And yeah, it just isn't going down well because it gives that sense of an almost kind of policy change going on or something. And it makes people talk about the future, right? Recently we got the 0 Hour and Outbreak Perfected quest, which I think has been one of the key highlights of Season of the Drifter personally. An Outbreak is a super strong weapon right now pretty much everywhere in the game. And I'm by no means suggesting a nerf here, but people are already saying it, when does this one get nerfed, right? This is a question that people start to ask, and it creates tension for players because let's face it, we tend to know when it's coming, and especially now, with Bungie kind of adjusting quite a few things in the game, players get that sense that the nerf policy is very much back on the table. There are already Reddit posts asking when Recluse or Outbreak will get the nerf, and that just doesn't help incentivize very well, does it? Hey, go get this gun. They're probably going to nerf it in a couple of months' time. And so I'm not saying that nerfs are strictly or always bad because I don't actually agree with that. Balance isn't a simple thing to get right. However, I really do understand why players feel frustrated at the game. The June update, once again, isn't the only factor in the community's growing frustration. So what else is going wrong and where do we go from here? Well, Bungie, as always, have got a lot of work to do. We're kind of all assuming that D3 is the priority right now, and that probably is the case. In addition to this, Bungie are trying to figure out and make new content for the remainder of D2's life cycle, and we don't know for sure what that actually will be. But if they are running a Year 3 annual pass, then personally, I almost hope the format will change up a little bit. I wonder if 2 Warmind kind of scale drops would be better. Just a random thought, and I'd love to get your opinions about that as well below. Finally though, the other thing, and we've spoken about it before in these seasonal review type videos, but last year, going up to Forsaken, the communication was pretty immense. We had roadmaps outlining major adjustments happening months down the line, constant reveals, constant increases in power, everything got better, and we got more of everything as well. The hype for what was about to release was pretty real. At the same time, we had more direct communication and developer interaction, and that just isn't happening in the moment on anywhere near the same level. And I know it's probably a difficult time for Bungie. I mean, I'm assuming that they're working extremely hard, but it feels like the passion from the community, the levels of player fatigue, honestly, I think a lot of people are kind of burned out right at this moment. The big questions about the future, and I mean, we really don't know what the plan is, and in a way that's okay, and almost expected, but it is met with that anxiety because we know that significant changes have gone on behind the scenes, and with much less being communicated outside of not very well received news, I don't know man, I think we just feel divided and more separated from Bungie than before, and it definitely does feel like Bungie's responsiveness has kind of changed. And I think when you look at the big picture there, that is why there is this frustration from Destiny players. So I would be curious to hear your thoughts down below guys. What is it that makes you feel most kind of irritated about Destiny? And what is it that you feel is missing from the game, you know? Because I definitely feel like we've lost a little bit of excitement in the community in general, and that is a shame, you know? I think even the 0-hour kind of secret mission we had recently was generally very, very well received by the community. It's just funny how the temperament can seem to change so quickly. And again, for me personally, one of the things I want to see is a solid kind of layout or an idea of what Destiny 2's future is going to look like before D3. So anyway guys, let us know your thoughts about it down below. Let us know your thoughts about how they've revealed content throughout the annual pass, any concerns you have about opulence or stuff that you'd love to see, as well as your thoughts on those exotic changes, or any of the other nerfs or adjustments to the game. But if you've enjoyed the video, a like below is very much appreciated. If you're still invested in Destiny and you want to keep up to date with everything related to the game, then be sure to hit subscribe. I do cover all of the content, news, guides, and that good stuff on the channel. But otherwise, thank you as always for tuning in, and I hope you all have an awesome day.